When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jadavji, your podcast host, a practicing social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 95, A Cumulative Grief Experience, Teenage Sexual Assault, Shame and Regrets, Tragedies Experienced, and Losing Loved Ones. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing our courageous and daring guest, Funmi Fatano Ayowole. Funmi is an emotional health and wellness coach, corporate trainer, and licensed financial advisor who deploys her relational gifts of natural empathy and disciplined connectedness to help unlock people's potentials and visions. Funmi's heart beats for the virtualsoulclinic.com, the tech-driven nonprofit organization she founded in 2021 that's democratizing mental health by connecting trained volunteer coaches with people in the community who require support via virtual, high-quality, safe spaces. As a certified project management and marketing communication professional, Funmi brings expertise and over 16 years of experience to several high-value projects, community building initiatives, and visions. She is a wife and a supermom that loves to thrive with family and friends first. Well, hello, Funmi. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast.
Thank you so much, Salima. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Wow. You're thanking me. I am delighted to have you as a guest on the show today. And I'm grateful for your willingness to be here to tell your story. And, I do say this to guests because I am always humbled to encounter guests just like yourself who allow me to tap into their vulnerabilities and draw on their strength and insight. And the inspiration that gets unlocked in this space is huge. And it's incredibly important that we take a stance together to help break barriers of mental stigma.
I completely agree. It's important for us to have the conversations. What mental health needs is more sunlight, more candor, and more conversations.
I love it. Sunlight, candor, more conversations. Yes. And of course, for me, if you're wondering, even though you might not be, but just in case you're still wondering, this podcast is all about bringing forward untold stories that people go through, whether directly about a mental health struggle or something else. And we know that no matter the story, there is impact on one's own mental health in some way, which remains tucked away. And this platform serves in a way to break the barriers of mental stigma that have been conditioned in our society. So today, together, I hope that you and I can carry on my hopeful mission, which is for both of us to really encourage people to share and tell what individuals typically have reservation to express. And of course, I bring forward and continue to bring forward a trend, and it's called the mental beauty rethink. For me, what immediately comes to mind when you hear this phrase, the mental beauty rethink?
The first thing that jumps out at me is a rethink. I believe that what you're trying to advocate for is a new perspective, a new
Mm-hmm.
way to think about and to see mental health or mental wellness. Mental beauty tells me about peace and serenity.
Mm-hmm.
It gives me really good and positive vibes. Mental beauty sounds to me like a person who is on the ocean and it's all really calm
Mm-hmm.
and it's inspiring. It makes room for reflection and a heightened sense of self awareness. There's
Mm-hmm.
just so much to unpack there with regards to mental beauty. The phrase in itself is beautiful.
Thank you. No, it's really really enriching way for you to position it. And yes, the intention of that phrase and the term, colliding the words mental beauty and seeing it as a rethink. The hope and the aim is that we can have something that's invitational, a new way to look at our mental well-being without deciding that it has to be good or bad, like this way or that way, negative or positive, that it's just part of who we are, just like physical wellness and physical health is part of who we are. It doesn't necessarily have to be about something being good or bad. But I often find that part of the stigma is all of the negative connotations and negative associations in the thoughts that kind of loom around when we say anything about mental well-being. So when you share that, hey, it is new perspective and it's a different way to see things, and your eloquent expression and description of the ocean, and it's like a person on the ocean and that experience, it's just wow, it really fits, it really connects. Mental beauty can be a thing.
It can be. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Funmi, are you ready to unravel your story? I sure am.
Let's go for it.
It really didn't sound so convincing, but I am still pumped and ready. All right. Well, if you say you're ready, I will trust you. So, Funmi, give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story. How would it read?
I think of the newspaper headline like maybe something on the cover of Oprah magazine or Forbes list. So it would read TFA's Resilient Resurgence.
Say it one more time, please.
TFA's Resilient Resurgence.
TFA's Resilient Resurgence. Okay,
Mhm.
so you're going to tell us what that means, where this powerful headline is coming from.
Happy to do so. TFA is an acronym. It's like the nickname a lot of people call me, and it just means the Funmi Ayowale. I
Mhm.
got that nickname maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, and it was just in one of them WhatsApp groups that included my mentor. And for some reason, she was referring to me, and she was like the Funmi Ayowale, just in case anybody was wondering who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the
Right.
one and only the Funmi Adiwale. So it was like a thing. And
Right.
so it was cut down to TFA. And if I hear someone call me TFA, I sort of like know the context from which they're coming from.
Right.
And because it means that people are referring to me
As the
as a
one.
coach, as the one, as
Mm-hmm.
the one that they've heard so much about. And so
Right.
it's TFA. So TFA's Resilient Resurgence.
Mm.
Resilient resurgence to me, it speaks to that power of resilience, being able to bounce back. I actually call it bounce back ability, from
Mhm.
all of what life throws at you.
Right.
And the resurgence it's just like at the scent of water, even a tree that is cut down, its roots will pick up again, will start to bud again,
Mm-hmm.
just at the scent of water. And so I feel like that's what's going on with me. I
Mm.
feel like I'm being nourished again. I'm growing again. And you'll start seeing like the roots, not the, well, maybe because the roots are underground.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much work happening in the unseen parts of me.
Right.
But then very soon you start seeing shoots and buds and fruit
Mm-hmm.
and all the
Mm.
beautiful, pretty stuff.
Yeah, it's all happening. You know what? This was such an eloquent description and, really eye opening to the power in your story that I think you're about to unpack and dive into. So, without further ado, let's go there. Let's segue into covering your untold story. So, tell us what it's all about the who, the what, the when, the where, the themes. Go for it.
All right. My untold story would be about a teenage girl who, from such an early age, has experienced grief, loss, shame, trauma
Mm-hmm.
to varying degrees, and sometimes in like clusters that appear to be happening all at once.
Mm,
This would be set in Lagos, Nigeria, and in Toronto, Canada.
okay. So, tell us more. So, I mean, there's definitely lots of themes, right?
Mhm.
From grief and loss and shame and trauma. Are you able to say what some of those experiences were that led you to these themes and these experiences that you felt?
Yes. Let's start with the earliest. I was sexually assaulted and violently raped
Oh my
at
goodness.
the age of 17. And
Hmm.
it was with somebody that I knew just over the phone
Hmm.
and was sort of convinced, or yeah, the word is convinced, to meet up.
Hmm.
And that meeting led to such violence. And I think that it took me a decade to get over the effects of such a traumatic event in my life.
Hmm.
I was robbed of my innocence. I was robbed of my virginity. I didn't get
Right.
that chance to willingly give it to a person that I loved, or that I was actually like interested in.
Hmm.
And the experience has made such a lasting impression in my life that I found it hard to be in real, loving, lasting relationships.
Right.
At a point, I had negative perspectives about men and about
Hmm.
the world and about my family because, trauma thrives in secret.
Right.
There's so much to unpack there.
Yeah. It sounds like there is certainly a lot to unpack there. And I can see how, which makes sense that such a violent sexual experience, trauma, not experience, trauma,
Hmm.
robbed you of so much and so many of your positive first time experiences that got taken from you and the lasting impression having residual impact on other relationships and other parts of your life. I can't imagine how devastating that was.
Well, I would say that it first began with a feeling that everything was well.
Hmm.
And I thought that, I mean, in my teenage, young adult kind of brain and perspective, I thought that I could just move on with my life because I was just about to get into college.
Hmm.
And I thought that, I would make new friends. I would leave it all behind. That is the pain of the past behind. My family members would not know.
So what you're saying is you experienced this deep trauma, violent trauma, and nobody knew about it.
Two friends knew,
Okay.
and a person who was like a mentor to me
Okay.
it was weird. The one friend that knew was because I used her house as an excuse.
Right.
That is to tell everybody else that that's where I was.
Right.
The second friend knew because she was also raped by the same person,
Okay.
and she eventually opened up to me or I to her, and that's how we both knew about each other.
So beyond confiding in that way, it doesn't
Yeah,
sound like your family members or anyone where you could reach out for help, where it doesn't sound like that happened at that point just yet.
exactly.
Okay, so you were thinking, I'm about to start college. I'm going to move forward. I can leave pain behind. I can leave these things in the past. Did that work out for you?
Not really. I came away with a deep sense of shame.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that the event colored me, or I should say, stained me. I felt like a huge blanket of disgrace.
Mm. Wow.
I'm not sure, but I think later on, looking back,
Mm-hmm.
when I really now started to go through my journey of healing, I realized that my perspective was one of so much shame, and I felt like I wasn't worth it. I felt like
Mm-hmm.
no one would want to be with me, not even girlfriends,
Mm-hmm.
if they really knew what I had been through.
Wow. I'm thinking like shame was so big for you. Like, not only did it impact you in a way where it didn't allow you to pursue relationships or, to think that no one will like me or want to pursue with me if they find out, but you're saying no one's going to like me or accept me, period. Even friends, like just people.
Yep.
That's like a whole other layer, a whole many layers. Wow. Oh, wow.
Because I thought that it was such a disgraceful event. I,
Mm-hmm.
I, I felt like I brought it on myself.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like perhaps there was something about me that attracted him and or attracted people that only would want me for such an elemental baseline desire.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't view myself as a real person in that sense. And I think that perhaps in my first 2 years of college, I just wanted to hide.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be tucked away in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
But it's sort of conflicting because I've always been very academically sound
Mm-hmm.
and very bright and very curious about theories and concepts. And so
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't help myself. I would still ask questions in class. I would still get up and have conversations, academic debates.
Mm-hmm.
I would still, and I mean, I was studying communications and marketing. So that was not like a head in the sand field.
A lot of interaction.
Yeah, lots of
Mm-hmm.
interactions and conversations and, some bits of history and some bits of practical things. So you would be, practicing or playing pretending to be like a newscaster or an journalist, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember every single thing I did in college, but
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? It
Right.
was very practical and interactive, and you had to be out there.
But it sounds like you might have programmed yourself to be on like an autopilot way in order to function.
That is very possible.
Mm-hmm.
I was, I would say during the day, I was out there, but the inner part of me thought that I didn't deserve to be out there, or if people really, really knew me,
Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't like me or give me the accolades that I receive because, hey, I'm doing so well,
Mm-hmm.
and I was scoring really great grades, and my professors they took an interest in me, but I just I just felt like there was something about me that needed to be concealed.
Mm. Right. It's like you were harboring this really deep secret and no one should find out under any circumstance.
Hmm.
So this is a lot about what you endured in terms of this traumatic time in your life. What did the healing look like?
Well, I think that first of all, I met a group of girlfriends that they were very easygoing. They didn't seem to me to be judgmental. They didn't make any snide remarks.
Mm-hmm.
I felt safe with them.
Right.
I felt welcomed,
Mm-hmm.
and I could ease into relationship.
Right.
And then I met a guy that he truly cared.
Mm.
He wanted to know. He was gentle. He listened.
Mm-hmm.
He was probably the first person that I fully described the entire night, the violent night too, from the beginning to the end, with no cuts, with no embellishments or
Mm-hmm.
no takeaways,
Mm-hmm.
no, you know what I mean? Like the full
Yeah,
story.
the full story from start to finish, being open
Exactly.
to hearing what you have to say and not trying to, no one trying to correct your story.
I didn't have to edit it or make it look pretty.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I was really real and raw. And we embarked on just this relationship where I don't think we even got physical at all till for a very, very, very long time. It was really just a safe space for me to be.
Right. Yeah.
And then I discovered the love of God.
Mm-hmm.
I think that somehow I was able to come to terms with a divine father that didn't cause the pain, that didn't bring the painful experience, but loved me so intensely. I was immersed in a reality of that divine being that his arms are open wide.
Right. This full immersion of feeling love and acceptance.
Exactly.
And for you at that time, if you can experience that in a religious and spiritual setting,
Hmm.
that must have been very uplifting for you and very reassuring. I'm sure it helped you undo some of the thought patterns and the narratives that you were carrying with you.
Exactly.
Mm.
It was somewhat cathartic.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
sounds like it was. Yes.
a lot of, I was able to release a lot of shame and regret.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, I have to say that apart from friendships, a romantic relationship, spiritual encounters, I also got some counseling.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably maybe about 5 to 6 years after
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I got connected with a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
So this was in my like early 20s. And we had maybe about 2 to 3 sessions where I could truly cry.
Mm-hmm.
I relived it. I opened up about the feelings
Mm-hmm.
and the perspective that I still, some of which, you know, some of the shreds of which I still held on to.
Mm-hmm.
Because on a physical level, I don't think that I was truly, truly comfortable in sexual experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to go there with the counselor.
And it sounds like you really allowed yourself to be vulnerable, like completely open to healing if you were at that place of letting out the shreds, that whatever you were holding on to, any little bit, you were, if you were identifying it, sounds like you were letting it, moving through it. You were really paying attention to the discomfort and working through it at a pace that was helpful for you. Thank you for sharing that process. I mean, it's so intimate, so personal. I'm in awe that you've been able to expose this and share this out loud. You know, you mentioned that there were a number of challenges that you experienced, which resulted in you having all of these themes of grief and loss and shame and trauma to varying degrees. And you started to talk to me about this violent rape that you experienced. And we started to dive into the recovery process, what that looked like. I'm curious about if there are other events that you've experienced that you're able to talk about or share with us today.
Well, yes, I met my husband. He was and is a very comforting and accepting person.
Mm-hmm.
He really encouraged me to break out of that shell that I had
Mm-hmm.
created for myself over the years.
Okay.
We got married and my then baby was likely somewhere between 8 months and a year. And we lived in a small apartment that on one Saturday morning got completely flooded.
Mm,
Somehow it had been raining all night and the foundations of the apartment were bad. So this is in Lagos, Nigeria.
right,
And I put my foot down on a Saturday morning from the bed. You know how you just plop down on one side.
right.
And the water was knee high.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Knee high. I was just visualizing that
Yes.
as you said it, and I was like, wait, that's high. That's very high.
Yes.
Wow, that's like going into a swimming pool.
Yes. It was knee high.
Was your baby on the bed with you, or was your baby in a different?
Perfect question.
Yeah, that's where I go. That's where I'm going.
It just so happened that my baby was with my mom-in-law, grandma, for the weekend.
Okay.
But truly, if my baby was around, he would be in another room in one of them low cots
Mm,
where it's super low.
super low, closer to the ground. Yes. Oh my goodness. Wow.
That was one of Providence. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah. That's the best way. The universe works in divine ways, right? So,
I'm telling you.
wow.
So, me and my husband struggling to what can we save? What can we salvage from this flood? The entire house was flooded.
Right.
So we lost everything like electronics, furniture, clothing. Just imagine what water will do to every one of your possessions.
Right. I mean, we had a flood recently that was not knee high, and there was a lot of stuff that got damaged and not replaceable and all of that. And I can't imagine if it was knee
Mm-hmm.
high, what that would have been like. You pretty much lose everything.
Yep. So we had to obviously move out of the house. The owner, the landlord, because we were renting, he refused to pay us the balance of
Like,
the rent at the time. We were forced, the three of us were forced to go back to my old room in my dad's house. And we lived there for about 4 months while we were looking for a new place to stay.
mm-hmm,
I think that was at the time the trigger for depths of depression
mm-hmm,
for me. My dad's house was so much further from my office at the time,
mm-hmm,
and so much farther for all of us, like from daycare, from my
right.
husband's office. So it was such a strain, put a strain on our relationship, my marriage relationship, truly. It put a strain on my relationship with my dad because, hey, now we're back in his space and he has all these rules and it's just different.
It's different when you're not in your own space and in the comfort of your own
Exactly.
space to be the way you want. Even if you have a guest in your home, after a while you
Mm-hmm.
want them to go home as well, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just that it's just that you have a certain way of living, and
Mm-hmm.
you can do so freely without wondering what someone is thinking or feeling or being.
Got it.
You living with your father, you obviously want to abide by his rules, and you can't not honor what he's requesting of you. And he's living his life a certain way, and he's asking you to kind of, hey, can you make sure you do it like this and make sure you do it like that? Because he probably could only handle so much adjustment as well.
You described it perfectly.
Hmm.
So there was so much going on. It started to affect my work.
Right.
I mean, it affected our finances because we didn't have nothing. We didn't have. I know that's like a double negative, right? But
Mm-hmm.
we didn't have nothing, and we needed to like start all over again.
Yeah. It's a lot. When you have a child and you're
Mm-hmm.
restarting, and you're now navigating like further distances. And like, I'm sure that if there's things that broke at your father's home, or things
Mm-hmm.
that mistakes happen, you have to replace them. Not
Mm-hmm.
have to, but you want to
Mm-hmm.
replace them. You
You
want to do
would.
your
I did.
part. And those are things that kind of get taken away from what you do have left to save to get to that next phase of where you're trying to go. So that balancing act.
And it's a little different in Nigeria. You pay rent by the year, not by the month.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine that?
Rent by the year?
Yes, one whole year. In fact, sometimes they ask for 2 years.
Wow.
Yep,
Okay. That puts it into a lot of perspective.
exactly.
Okay. So it's almost like having a down payment for
Hmm.
people who live in Ontario, right? That it's a down payment on a home.
So just picture everything, and I was really,
Mhm.
it sent me spiraling with a lot of depression and anxiety and thoughts of suicide. So it was like when it rains, it pours, you know?
Right.
It was just everything hitting me left, right, and center. How did I get out? I found a coach on the streets of Instagram. It was very weird. it must have been Providence too, because her program was very expensive, and somehow I think I emailed her and she gave me a full scholarship. And I worked with her. I worked with her. My God, I put in the work. I was sitting on the bathroom floor for nights because she happened to be in Canada at the time. So
Okay.
you can imagine the time difference.
Well, time zones are completely
Yeah.
different.
So it was really late. Sometimes it was really, really late at night. My kid and my husband would be sleeping in the next room or door, and
Hmm.
I would be on a coaching call on Zoom.
Right.
She asked me questions. I dug deep. I wrote, I journaled, endless writing. My God.
Hmm. Hmm.
Whatever it is that she said I needed, I did it.
Right. You knew that these are things that are going to help me. These are things that are going to support me. So I have to find a way. And it sounds like you were really in trust with the process. You're like, if I'm going to give this my all, then I really need to give it my all. And it sounds like it was your priority.
It was like a lifeline for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there other tragedies that you're able to share and talk about?
So in April of 2022, I lost my mom. At the start of the pandemic, let's say February of 2021,
Hmm.
she was previously living here in Canada, and my sister and I were taking care of her.
Okay.
She was a cancer survivor. She was dealing with diabetes and arthritis. But because of our lives, that is, my sister and I, we were tag teaming along with like personal support workers.
Right.
But because of the pandemic, there was a huge shortage of personal support workers, and we just
Yeah.
couldn't handle it anymore.
Hmm.
So my husband took my mom back to Nigeria
Hmm.
to live with my dad, where we would have someone to live in. You know what I mean? Like a live in nurse
Right.
and a house helper. So she was in Nigeria. I think maybe they had gotten the flu or something earlier on in the year of 2022. Both my dad and my mom had gotten over the flu. It was not COVID.
Hmm.
And suddenly I was in the middle of a work meeting. I just noticed so many missed calls from my
Right.
sister, from my husband, from Nigeria, from my dad's assistant in
Wow.
Nigeria. It was bizarre.
You must have had so many thoughts running through your mind.
I didn't get it. So I think I called my husband back first.
Mm.
And I was like, what's going on? He says, I need to call my sister. He didn't tell me. Like, it was almost like he would not be the one that would
Right.
let it out. I called my sister. She sounded really panicky. She said she was on the phone with my dad's PA. She couldn't get through to my dad. It was just a jumble.
What kinds of thoughts were running through your mind? Like, did you have
I
any
was just
inkling?
really confused
Right. Okay.
until I finally heard it. Oh, they said, I thought, okay, I remember I now got through to the assistant and he says, your mom, mommy, we had to rush her. We're taking her in an ambulance. What?
Right.
And she had already passed. She didn't make it to the hospital.
So, like en route.
Yeah. But I
Oh.
think actually she had passed before they put her in the ambulance. The ambulance was just more like it was a gesture to try and save her.
Right. Wow, that must have been also very devastating, especially if you know that both your parents they did get sick and they worked through it and they made a comeback
Mm-hmm.
and things were
Mm-hmm.
stable. And you're in a
Mm-hmm.
work meeting. Okay, you're thinking everything is good. Mom is in Nigeria. All of the help and support that she need are there. We're checking in. My sister and I, we've
Exactly.
done all that we can to tag team and do what we can to give her the best we can. And you're thinking things are okay, and it just completely the rug being pulled from under your feet at the most inopportune and least expected time. That sounds so devastating.
It was. It was. It was really devastating. It was. I remember dropping everything and screaming out loud for minutes on end.
Mm.
I remember sending a message to my then line manager
Mm-hmm.
and just shutting everything down. I remember somehow getting the strength to drive to my sister's house, maybe about 30 minutes away, and just needing to be in her presence.
Yeah. Were either of you able to go to Nigeria?
Yes, the both of us did. We went to Nigeria. We conducted the burial ceremonies in Nigeria, and I came back. The second day of getting back to work, I was let go.
Oh my. On what grounds?
None on financial grounds, something of the sort. Operational financial grounds.
Like restructuring kind of thing?
Yeah, that's the term.
Okay.
Whatever the excuse was, because it certainly wasn't performance based. Because a few weeks before, I
Mm-hmm.
had done a series of performance reviews, vertical, horizontal, you know what I mean, like peer
Right.
based,
Right.
manager based, and I was scoring in the 80s, the high 80s.
Right. You were rocking those.
I was rocking.
Wasn't the performance.
Exactly.
You were, again, blindsided.
Yep.
Circumstance for you were completely different. But unfortunately, when companies do have to shift and pivot, it sometimes doesn't come down to performance, but their resources and where they have to allocate or reallocate. But at the same time, for you in your position, I can only imagine that you were thinking, really, did you need to do that like right now on day two after
Suck.
we did all of this together and I have been working so hard and showing up every single day and
And they sent flowers to my house, when she passed before I traveled. They were very, very nice and compassionate. And I kept getting like messages from my line manager's line manager,
right.
It was a total blindside.
Yeah, my goodness. That sounds like it was really rough. And I understand that there was also another loss that you experienced not long after.
So, I felt like when I came back from my mom's burial, I hadn't yet started mourning her truly. So my mom passed April 2022. I lost that job right after. I came back. My dad came and I got a new job in July of 2022. We
Okay.
started settling in. Everything was great. My dad turned 80 in May of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
He was fine.
Mm-hmm.
July 1st, Canada Day, we all went for fireworks. And my dad was being his good old jolly self.
Yeah.
He was making everyone laugh. Grandpa, my son loved him so much.
Mm-hmm.
Really, they had formed like this boys' bond.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And all my dad complained about was a slight tummy ache. He thought maybe he was having like an acid reflux.
Right.
That's what he thought.
Mm-hmm.
July 2nd, he was throwing up.
Oh gosh.
The evening of July 2nd, I took him to Markham Stouffville Emergency Hospital.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They said that, they detected that there was an infection. He got into the intensive care. Next thing I know, he was being admitted overnight because they felt that he had a kidney stone that was blocking the passage.
Okay.
And July 3rd, he had 2 operations,
Oh my goodness.
all back to back to back.
Mm-hmm.
My sister and I started tag teaming. I think I was there mostly from the whole of July 2nd, the whole of July 3rd, and my dad passed away July 4th, 6:18 a.m.
Oh, wow. That must have been so unexpected.
Extremely. And I was right there
In front
when
of
they
you.
pulled the plug. Yeah. Because July 3rd, he had like his organs had shut down.
Mm,
He had gone into septic shock.
right. So the doctors explained all that to you, that
Yes.
after the two surgeries that his organs were shutting down and it was too much for him.
So his blood pressure was too low.
Okay.
His heart rate was too low. They were hoping for a miracle, but they said if the
Hmm.
whole thing happened again, that cardiac arrest, they would not be able to revive him, or they would not choose to revive him because
Hmm.
of his age and because of the state of his organs.
Hmm. Okay.
That was a lot.
I'm trying to put myself in your shoes and I can't. And I just keep visualizing that these doctors are saying all these things to you. And I wonder if you just kind of numbed out and just you heard the words but didn't hear the words, or it just sounded like background noise. Like I'm just trying to experience what that was like for you.
It was absolutely devastating. It was insane because
Hmm.
this is a person that a day before,
Yeah.
he probably ate a popsicle, for God's sake. He ate a popsicle at the Markham Fairgrounds
Right.
and was watching the show.
Right. And you said he was being his jolly self. Okay, I have
Yes.
a bit of a tummy ache, but we all have tummy aches from time to time.
Yes.
And acid reflux, yes, it can be dangerous, but at the same time, it's so common to have acid reflux. We don't think of it as something to really be alarmed by.
There was nothing.
Right. And he wasn't showing agonizing pain or anything like that.
No.
Right. So it's just so sudden. So sudden. The theme of unexpected really seems to show up in all
Yeah.
of the encounters that you've shared today. And I know that probably this was just a sample of the many things that you have had to endure and experience over your journey, connecting to grief and loss and shame and trauma and all these tragedies and all of the accumulation of grief and how it shows up in your world. It sounds like this is just a sample of what you've shared, but that unexpected seems to be like a common thread.
You're right.
So when people come to see me for therapy, individuals, they're typically in one of three places. Some people are getting started where they're just bringing everything to therapy and saying, hey, let's sort stuff out, figure it out. Some people are in the middle, meaning maybe that they're prompted to come because there's something that they're in the midst of working on and they know it's triggering the past, which maybe they have dealt with some, but maybe not dealt with others. And some people are looking back, meaning like they could have worked a lot on their personal selves and they want to move forward in their life. And from a personal growth stance, sometimes it's about getting closure on a few things that are, as you mentioned before, like some shreds that are still hanging on and
Mm-hmm.
before a person can fully move forward into the next chapter. So for yourself, in the journey that you have endured from what you have shared with this cumulative grief, where would you place yourself on this journey? Would you say that you are in the start? Are you in the middle? Or are you looking back?
Hmm. Based on the way you've explained it, I think I am somewhere in between the middle and looking back. I don't know if that
You're
makes
an
sense.
in-betweeny. Yes.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you're kind of at that segue that you're kind of transitioning from one to the other.
Because I'm not at the start. I'm currently in therapy,
Right.
and I have been in therapy since the start of 2023.
Mm-hmm. Like restarted.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So there are a couple of things that I have worked through.
Right. And it sounds like you have a lot more awareness, right? So, which is why you're
Yes,
definitely not at the beginning because you have all this
yes,
awareness. There's many concepts and pieces that you have worked through and uncovered, and then there might be pieces that you've uncovered but you're working on, or it's in progress, a work in progress.
You got it.
Okay.
So that's why I'm sort of in the middle and towards the end looking back.
Right. Okay. So I want to ask you, after having gone through everything that you've spoken about, I'm really curious. I mean, you've already started to explain how your mental health was impacted, but I was really curious about how your untold story has really affected your mental health. I mean, I know that of violent trauma that you experienced from such a young age and it robbing you of so much. And then all these other things that you've experienced after that. But there was one point where you were talking about the depression that you experienced and how you really did get to the place of having suicidal thoughts. So I was wondering if you might be able to share a little bit about the suicidal thoughts, knowing that your mental health was affected so much that you were contemplating your life in that way. Would you be open to sharing a little bit about that experience?
Yes, I can. And for anyone that's listening that may or may not have had these kinds of thoughts, please remember that your life is totally worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one thing that at that point I wasn't convinced of.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that it would be easier for everyone around me if I just disappeared. I also thought it would be easier for me because I wouldn't have to deal with the consequences of XYZ happening at that time in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the one thing that first, before I met that coach, the one thing that was keeping me just hanging on by a thread was my son's existence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was like something for me to live for.
He was your glimmer of hope.
I think so.
He was your reason for living. So even though you had all this passive thoughts of, life's not worth living and I don't want to be here anymore, and it would be so much easier if I could just disappear. It'd be easier for me. It would be easier for others. I don't really want to deal with this stuff anymore. I can't handle this. But then if you thought about your son, the hope would shine.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Because even from his really, really early years,
Mm-hmm.
he's always been like a shining personality.
Mm, right.
He's always been friendly and smiley and
so his energy.
Yes.
The energy that he sort of gives off is just so vibrant.
Yes.
Mm. Oh, that's lovely. I want to meet him.
Yes.
So great. And tell me, in this dark place, you were able to pivot. It wasn't just the glimmer of hope of your son. It sounds like you were able to pivot. You got help.
It was that lady I was describing.
Right.
Who I would sit on the bathroom floor with her, box of tissues, journal in my hand, answering questions.
Mm-hmm.
She gave me space to speak. She gave me space to be.
Right.
Her questions triggered a lot of introspection.
Right.
A lot of like digging deeper into, my reason for being. And even me saying, oh, Andre, my son, was a reason for being. We went deeper than that.
Oh, I was going to say, I mean, he was the glimmer, but there would have to be more. So my curiosity, when I have ever spoken to people who are really in a dark place, is I always get curious for a person's reasons for dying. Why do you really, I want to know more about that. I'm curious. Most people get scared to have that conversation, right? But for me, if you're having thoughts of wanting to end your life, even a passive thought of just not wanting to be around, I want to know about what is prompting you. What are those reasons for not wanting to be around? Because typically, and what I have seen as a pattern is that for someone to tell me what the reasons for dying are, I will learn what the reasons for living are.
That is so profound.
It might start with, yeah, there's people in my life that I wouldn't want to leave behind and I wouldn't want to have them suffer. Well, tell me more about that. I don't usually like to ask a lot of why questions, but what is so important for you to not leave them behind? Because then you're going to get into values. You're going to get into something that's really important, right? So you have had a chance to see all of this unfold before you, and also that you had this opportunity to dig deeper and move through it. So tell me, Funmi, what is your key message to the listeners of our show? What do you want them to know?
I would love everybody listening to this to know that there is an untold story, even within theirs. There's something deeper that they can dive into that would produce so much more motivation for being exactly who they are called to be. Not just existing, but for really, truly living their best life. I would want them to know that there is so much more than what they are currently experiencing. They can truly rise up to their full potential, and everybody is a work in progress.
Right. Yeah, we're all work in progress, all of us. So tell me, I'm curious about what was game changing for you? Is there like a game changer inspiration, something that's close to you that reflects your untold story, that, something that was pivotal for you? So is there like a book or a mantra or a quote or a speaker or something that really spoke volumes, that really sparked a shift in you?
I would say that between the end of 2023, when I was just coming out of the depths of pain with my dad's passing, there was a speaker, or there is a speaker and a mentor, someone that's close to me that truly spoke life into me. Her name is Debola Deji Kurumi.
Can you say her name again?
Debola Deji Kurumi. She's
Okay.
based in Lagos, Nigeria, but she's an international speaker, professional coach, very renowned, and she's such a multi-dimensional human, as beautiful and as popular and as renowned and famous as she is in that world of personal development. We are also very, very close.
Okay.
She's a friend and a sister. My encounter with her sitting on the floor of her living room one of the last days before I left Lagos, Nigeria, after burying my dad, was pivotal to me because she sat with me in like the mess. She cried with me. I was I was able to just be. And when we dried up the tears, it was a case of now it's time to take my life back.
And that's what you mean by she spoke life into you.
Yes.
You found a way to reclaim your life.
Yes.
Beautiful. All right. So tell me, what is a cause or organization that has been impactful to you on your journey that you would like to give a shout out to? Who would that be?
It would be two of this, my mentor's causes. It's the Immerse Coaching Company, and all of the courses and programs over the years have really been instrumental in my personal development journey, discovery, all of that really great stuff.
Right.
But very, very critical is the Visionary Compass Accelerator program that I was privileged to go through. I'm shouting it out because it is such a game changer for visionaries who want to execute their vision with excellence.
Right.
It's like an MBA grade
Wow.
accelerator program. So I'm giving it a shout out.
Yeah, great shout out.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us, how can people connect with you if they would like to? How are you findable?
I am findable at thefunmiayowale.com. I'm also findable on Instagram. My nonprofit, the Virtual Soul Clinic, on Instagram is the Virtual Soul Clinic. The website is thevirtualsoulclinic.com. And I'm on LinkedIn.
And you also have a podcast too, right?
Yes, okay. Exactly.
Yes. We've grabbed that information from you, which is great. So that should be on your show notes page. So if anyone is, I can't imagine who wouldn't be inclined to reach out to you. They could just go to the page and click on your name, and all of that stuff will be readily available. So Funmi, Guess what?
What?
You've just dared yourself to share. Congrats. Yeah.
That was so good.
Yeah, this was a really invigorating conversation. And I would just like to take a moment to express my gratitude for the deep story shared in this space today. Your willingness to dive deep and explore all of the many experiences that you have endured that each tie back into some form of grief and loss, and exemplifying bravery and courage and strength to face your truth and persevere through pain and discomfort and create new meaning for yourself. My friend, this is nothing short of incredible. And I'm truly grateful to have been able to hear and witness your story today. So thank you for the deep conversation and for all the daring and sharing.
Thank you so much. It was invigorating. It got a little dark, but it was worth it.
Well, it was your true story, right? That's what we were doing.
Yeah.
So once again, Funmi, thank you for being part of Dare to Share Your Untold Story and helping to be a voice in breaking down the barriers of mental stigma. To all of our listeners, if you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.